The romantic story we will mention today is related to a beautiful province of Balochistan in Pakistan. We have taken this story from the book Classical Romantic Stories of Pakistan by American-based Pakistani writer, researcher and social worker Dr. Asif Riaz Qadir. It is important to mention one more thing here, that oral tradition has been very important for the Baluchi tribes as an ethno-linguistic group. It served them as their history when there was no written history in their language. The first field work on Baluchi oral tradition twigs from the 19th century when M. Longworth Dames compiled his popular poetry of the Baluchis in 1907. It was published from London and has 2 volumes. Volume 1 is the English translation of the Baluchi texts given in Volume 2. It was a landmark in the study of indigenous oral tradition of Balochistan. It was the only such work that contained an introductory note dealing with the sources, origin, and character of Baluchi poetry, with material on classification, forms of verse, methods of singing, the antiquity of heroic poems, and so on. The second volume contains an account of the language of Baluchi poetry. Thus story of Shahdad has reached us by traveling from generation to generation. The style of the story is in the form of poetic dialogues in which Shahdad and Mahnaaz speak simultaneously. It is said that both the hero and the heroine of the story were poets themselves. This story is also mentioned in Mir Chakar Khan Rind's book Baluchi Love Poetry. It has also been translated into Urdu prose by many authors including Abid Mirgoz Baksh Sabir, Syed Hashmi, Shafi Akil, Syed Hamidullah Shah Hashmi, S.M. Naz and many others. Now let's hear and watch the beautiful story of Shahdad and Mahnaaz. Story of Shahdad and Mahnaaz. If one studies the popular love tales of Balochistan, it is a strange coincidence that most of the romantic tales of this region are reminiscent of the time of Mir Chakar Khan Rind, the chief of the Rind tribe. This story also belongs to the same period. Its main character is Mir Shahdad, the son of Mir Chakar Khan, also named Shahzad in some books. It is also an interesting coincidence that Hani, the heroine of a popular love story Hani and Shamurad, became the forced wife of Sardar Mir Chakar Khan, and Mahnaaz, the heroine of this story, married Mir Chakar's son Mir Shahdad as his second wife. Both the main characters are poets. Although Mir Chakar Rind was also a poet, his beloved Mahnaaz was a famous poet of Baluchi literature. Her life saw great ups and downs, but she endured every hardship, and remained steadfast. She was accused, and slandered but remained chaste. She used her poetry as a means of expression to cope with the situation. At one point she said, "I am like a broad-leaved fig tree, which has grown in narrow gates and gorges. The autumn wind may blow in any direction. It bends the heads of trees and shakes them. But it still hasn't been able to shake my head." The story mostly revolves around the life of Mahnaaz, who belonged to Noani Baluchi tribe. She was cousin of Mir Shahdad and engaged in her childhood to him, the son of Mir Chakar Khan Rind, the chief of the Rind tribe. They loved each other dearly. The two anxiously awaited for the time to get married and become one forever. In this way, both of them wove a web of dreams with blossoming flowers of poetry, but later on, due to clash and differences between both families, Mir Chakar Rind refused to marry his son with Mahnaaz. Shahdad and Mahnaaz thought that the differences in both families were temporary and would end with the passage of time, but it turned out to be wrong. Disagreements escalated, and all hopes of marriage were dashed. Mir Shahdad was young and the son of the greatest chief of the Rinds, so a second relationship, wife, was sought for him. Many girls of the tribe wanted to become the wife of Mir Shahdad. Eventually, a girl was chosen, but Mir Shahdad refused. "I will not marry." "What is the reason for not getting married?" "You are young and you have to lead the tribe." The father asked, to which he replied, "I will only marry Mahnaaz, she is my childhood fiancée, I will marry her." But the family did not grant his wish and insisted, "No, forget Mahnaaz, now you have to get married here." Thus, Shahdad's marriage was forcibly arranged to a girl named Margot. He was married to Margot, but Mahnaaz was still in his heart. He had performed marriage with Margot at the insistence of his family members, otherwise, his heart and mind were still in Mahnaaz's trust. Mahnaaz, on the other hand, was well aware of the fact that Shahdad's marriage to Margot had taken place against his will, and he had done all that under stress. So the love of Mahnaaz was alive and fresh in his heart as before. However, both were compelled and helpless in their respective places, but they were not disappointed. They were convinced that at some point the situation would change and the grievances of the two families would end. With that in mind, they lived with the hope of a better time. The time changed. The differences that had arisen between the two families, i.e., family of Shahdad and Mahnaaz, gradually faded over time until a moment came when their broken relationship was reconnected. People on both sides began to share each other's sorrows and joys again. This change of circumstances created a new hope in the heart of Shahdad. He thought that Mahnaaz's family knew very well, and Mahnaaz herself knew, that he had been forced to marry Margot. Now that family ties had been re-established, he should marry his fiancée. He first persuaded his family and then contacted Mahnaaz's parents and sent them a message. Mahnaaz is my childhood fiancée. I got married for the first time under duress. Now that the two families have established a relationship, how good it would be for us to get married. When Mahnaaz's family received the message from Shahdad, they consulted with one another. They also knew that their daughter Mahnaaz and Shahdad loved each other and that love was still in their heart. Both were unhappy even after Shahdad's marriage to Margot. Mahnaaz's condition was especially deplorable. The family saw that she was always quiet. In those days, even in her poetry, there was nothing but sorrow and grief. Her poetry was a severe satire on society. They also thought that Shahdad is the son of Mir Chakar Khan Rind. It was better to reunite the broken relationship. They said to Shahdad, "We have accepted the proposal, but what will happen to our daughter in the presence of your first wife?" Shahdad assured them that Mahnaaz is my first and last love. What happened in the past is a matter of days gone by. Now I want to start a new life. When the family of Mahnaaz agreed, Shahdad was very happy. He feared that Mahnaaz's parents might decline the proposal because of the presence of his first wife, but when they consented, his love burned like a spark. He once again started making plans to live with Mahnaaz. On the other hand, ever since Mahnaaz found out that Shahdad had asked her for her hand, she was happy. When she found out that her relationship had been endorsed, she was overjoyed. Some of her friends explained to her, "He already has a wife, Margot, in his house." But Mahnaaz didn't care. She replied, "It doesn't matter. Shahdad has always been mine and will always be mine. We are both childhood fiancés and love each other." In this way, the matter of marriage was settled, and in a few days, Shahdad married Mahnaaz. After marriage, they both used to remain with each other whole the time as if they had no other purpose in life. Shahdad did not even think that his other wife Margot was also in the house. He completely ignored her, and this behavior was very painful for Margot. She tried hard to attract Shahdad and make him realize his unfair treatment, but to no avail. He would sing Mahnaaz's praises all the time. It was true that Mahnaaz was beautiful, intelligent, and above all his childhood love, but Margot was also his wife. It was Shahdad's attitude that ignited the fire of jealousy and revenge in Margot's heart. She said to herself, "This woman has taken away all my happiness. I will take revenge on her in such a way that she will remember." Her heart burned with the fire of jealousy and revenge, but she did not understand how to take revenge on Mahnaaz. She would make a plan and then abandon it at her own. Finally one day, a trick came to her mind. She began to say to herself, "I have to do something that will make Shahdad disgusted with Mahnaaz. That way he will start hating her and will automatically turn to me." She was ready to do anything that would make Shahdad hate Mahnaaz, no matter how illegal and how immoral it may be. She had decided that she would degrade her in the eyes of her husband. She started work on this conspiracy, made plans and thought of tricks day and night with new ideas in mind. One day, an old friend of Shahdad came. His name was Omar and he was lame. He was his best friend and had met Shahdad after a long time. The two had spent their childhood together. At that time, their friendship was considered ideal among their peers. As they grew older, their activities changed and both of them remained engaged in their own circles. Now after a long time, Omar had come to Shahdad's house, so Shahdad was very happy to meet him. He received him with great warmth and love. "Come on man, we have met after so many days. I had came to see you, don't remember?" The two hugged each other and Shahdad did not spare any effort in welcoming his old fast friend. They chose to embark on their playful activities. They had met after many years and there were countless memories of childhood, their words were unending. Even after dinner, they kept talking gossip till late and said good night to each other and fell asleep. Mahnaaz was fast asleep at that time but Margot was still awake. All sorts of thoughts came to her mind and she thought, "Today is the right opportunity. I can succeed in discrediting Shahdad from Mahnaaz." When she was satisfied that Shahdad and Omar and Mahnaaz were fast asleep, she slowly got up from her bed and went to Omar's bed barefooted. Going to Omar's bed, she put on Omar's shoes and walked slowly to Mahnaaz's bed. Then she walked back to Omar's bed, took off the shoes, and quietly laid down near Omar's bed. Thus she laid the foundation of her conspiracy and fell asleep. The next morning, when dawn broke, Omar asked Shahdad's permission to leave after breakfast and he gladly bade him farewell. Not only that, he went a short distance to say goodbye to his friend. On return, he saw Margot standing outside the house as if waiting for him. Shahdad was a little surprised and asked, "Who are you waiting for here?" In response, Margot said in a slightly sarcastic tone, "I was waiting for you." "Waiting for me? Why? What's the matter?" He looked at Margot in surprise and she asked, "This Omar whom you call your childhood friend is not a good man, he doesn't even care about your honor." Omar became surprised and angry when Margot said so. He scolded her and said, "What nonsense are you talking?" Shooting the last arrow on the target, she replied with a poisonous smile. "Maybe you don't know that your childhood best friend has been having a good time at night with Mahnaaz." Upon hearing this, Shahdad stepped forward, slapped her and said angrily, "You are slandering for nothing. What proof do you have?" She grabbed Shahdad by the wrist and led him inside the house, showing him the marks of Omar's shoes and saying, "Here is my proof. Look at these marks of Omar's shoes. Come on. Look at them carefully and then tell me whether I am telling the truth or a lie." Shahdad saw that from the bed on which Omar had slept at night, the marks of his shoes went to the bed of Mahnaaz, and then there were also the marks of his return. He saw all this with his own eyes. Did he know what kind of trap Margot had set for him? His face lost into color. He did not understand what to say. He kept thinking in his heart that Mahnaaz, who was dearer to him than his life, would deceive him like that. Does she have such a character? Was all her love for years a sham? Then he said to himself, "No, no, that can't happen." But then those shoe marks? What was their purpose? He was engrossed in similar thoughts and standing nearby, Margot was smiling at her success. She knew that if a woman in the tribe committed such a crime, her husband would kill her and she thought, now Mahnaaz's death was certain but this wish of Margot could not be fulfilled. At first, Shahdad intended to kill Mahnaaz but he was compelled by his love and he could not do so. However, he had become very suspicious about Mahnaaz. He was not only skeptical but also convinced of her character. He went to Mahnaaz in a fit of rage, and as usual, she greeted him with great love, but when she saw Shahdad so angry, she was astonished. Shahdad without hearing anything grabbed her by the hair and dragged away, saying, "I saw your love. You have been deceiving me for so long. You have tarnished my honor. But what have I done? What's wrong with me? Let me know," she inquired from Shahdad who was mad with rage and was not ready to listen to her. He beat her and thunderously said, "Get out of my house now. Otherwise, I will kill you." Mahnaaz tried hard to say something to prove her innocence, but Shahdad did not give her that opportunity. So she left with tears in her eyes. She went to her parents' house, but could not understand that the man who was madly in love with her and was so devoted to her, what had happened to him all of a sudden. Why he has beaten me so badly and disgraced me and thrown me out of the house. She was sure that Margot had done all that, and she could have cleared her position provided she could have got a chance to explain. She thought that if she had been accused, she should have been asked about it. She did not commit any crime and did not commit any sin, yet she was treated so badly. This bitterness of her life was reflected in her poetry. Addressing Shahdad, she said in a poem, "I grabbed your horse's saddle and put my other hand on your shoe. Oh, my chief, if I have made a mistake, so forgive me in the name of Allah. But you pushed me with great cruelty. I fell to the ground and my perfumed hair became dusty."
Now Mahnaaz sat in her parents' house in the hope that in a few days, when Shahdad's anger will be cooled down, he would surely realize his mistake. So she forgot about the degrading treatment she received when she was evicted. She hoped that as soon as Shahdad's anger subsided he would come to pick her up, but many days passed, he did not come, rather he did not even send anyone to tell her the good news. It was as if he had completely forgotten Mahnaaz. Her parents were devastated. It was very sad for them that their daughter was sitting in their home and she was kicked out of the home for misconduct which was the cause of her disgrace. However, despite this sadness and despair, Mahnaaz was still not disappointed. She expresses her grief in her poems. "O you who walk, if you go through there, greet the companion of my youth." Addressing her beloved Shahdad, she said, "Oh, my cousin, you have broken moral standards and moral bonds. You are proud to have lost your wife." She knew that the magic of Margot had worked its way through her, and that is why I am in this situation. She expresses these sentiments in one of her poems like, "Your intellect is like that mirror, which hangs on the shoulders of shepherds, and one end of which stays dry all the time. That is why Margot has succeeded in deceiving you." Mahnaaz knew she was innocent and chaste, and what happened to her was the result of slander and accusations. She finally decided that she would go herself. She will meet Shahdad and find out about the cause of his cruel treatment and prove her innocence, so she took her father and brother with her and reached Shahdad. She said, "I have been unjustly slandered. I am innocent and chaste." Her father and brother also explained to Shahdad, but he did not accept their point of view. Mahnaaz said, "I am ready to go through all sorts of trials to prove my innocence." The traditional way to prove one's innocence at that time was to fill a pot with oil, light a fire under it, and when the oil began to boil, a ring was put in it. The accused had to pick the ring by dipping the hand in the boiling oil to prove innocence. The pot was so deep that the ringer's hand sank up to the elbow. They believed that innocent would not be harmed, with no doubt about his innocence. The same method was used to find out the false truth of Mahnaaz. When the people gathered, they brought the pot of oil heated and asked Mahnaaz whether she was ready for this test. Mahnaaz said, "I am ready. I am ready to go through an ordeal to prove my innocence." When Shahdad was asked for his opinion, he also supported the proposal because there could not be a bigger test than that. So when the oil started boiling, a ring was thrown in it. Some elders of the tribe said to Mahnaaz, "Now put your hand in the oil and bring the ring out of the pot." Mahnaaz's heart was pure, so she didn't look scared at all, rather there was an act of satisfaction on her face. She thought that if her innocence is proved, she would be saved from the accusation. When asked to pick up the ring, she first glanced at the people standing around, then at Shahdad and Margot, and then proceeded with great satisfaction. "O God, you know the secret of hearts. You know that I am being punished for my innocence." She recited God's name aloud, opened her hand and put it into the metal pot of boiling oil. People all around were watching in amazement that Mahnaaz had brought out the ring with great satisfaction and was not harmed even slightest. It was as if she had dipped her hand in normal water, not in the boiling oil. As soon as she took out the ring, The people standing nearby started saying to each other, "Mahnaaz is innocent. She has been accused falsely. She is innocent." Shahdad, who a few moments ago was looking at Mahnaaz with angrily, stood as a picture of remorse. When he saw that Mahnaaz was innocent, he was sad in his heart that he had hurt her so much just by believing in Margot's words. He hurriedly forwarded towards Mahnaaz, but Mahnaaz stepped back and said, "You slandered my chastity and kicked me out of the house. I was not given a chance to clear my position." Then she addressed the people standing nearby and said, "My innocence has been proven in front of you people. Now Margot must go through this test too." Everyone agreed and said, "Where is Margot? Bring her. She was just here, where did she go?" Margot knew that Mahnaaz was innocent, so she eluded everyone's eyes and left. Shahdad wanted to go ahead and talk to Mahnaaz, but she refused to talk. Although the spark of love was still burning in her heart, yet the way she was insulted, there was no room for her to talk to him. Shahdad pleaded, "Listen to me first, then decide what you want." Mahnaaz replied, "When you kicked me out of the house accusing of infidelity, did you listen to me then? Did you give me a chance to explain? Where did your love go at that time?" Shahdad was so embarrassed that he did not know the answer. He was deeply sorry for his mistake and regretted it in his heart. "I wish I had not listened to the words of Margot and tried to know the truth. I would not have seen this day." He said to Mahnaaz's father, "You ask Mahnaaz to forgive my mistake." But he replied, "The time for forgiveness has passed. You have done all this at your own. You have been seduced by his yarn and have not only thrown yourself into the furnace of misery but Mahnaaz too." When Shahdad asked Mahnaaz's brothers for help, they replied, "You should have thought of all this when you tried to tarnish our sister's honor." Thus, Shahdad faced disappointment from all sides, but did not give up. He was still convinced that one day the love in Mahnaaz's heart would be awakened, she would forgive him and the two would meet again. He had hoped for that, but Mahnaaz had decided that she would not stay with him anymore. These verses of hers may have been recited by her at that same time. "O foolish son of my uncle! You have believed your second wife's lies. Hit me and abuse me. All these things are for the lower caste. Not for a prettier girl like me." Since Mahnaaz did not want to live with Shahdad, she asked for divorce from him. As soon as Shahdad heard of divorce, he became upset. Although he had mistreated her greatly, he still had love for Mahnaaz in his heart. He asked the tribesmen to explain to Mahnaaz, but they also said, "After what you have done to her, it is right for her to ask for divorce. You should divorce her because she doesn't want to be with you anymore." Eventually, Shahdad was forced to divorce Mahnaaz and she was left with her father and brothers. Her following verses are from that time. "You happily divorced 3 times. Count it and give it to me. I am in a world of compulsion tied in the folds of my scarf." Mahnaaz was living in her parents' house, but Shahdad was in a worse condition. He went crazy and wandered around. He was no longer interested in food or drink, like other people. He left the company of friends and began to live in solitude. He would leave the town and wander in the forest and mountains. On the other hand, Mahnaaz's condition was also strange. She had demanded a divorce from Shahdad herself, and now that she had obtained it, her life had become meaningless. Just as the lamp of her love was burning in the heart of Shahdad, so was his love in the heart of Mahnaaz despite all hatred. The fact was that she had obtained a divorce from Shahdad to seek revenge, and now she was regretting it. When the days of Mahnaaz's iddah were over, her parents consulted with the people of the tribe and decided that Shahdad had accused her of having illicit relations with Omar. Now she should marry Omar. When Mahnaaz was contacted in this regard, she said, "Now that my iddah days are over, let me think of something." But the family insisted, "No, you have to get married. It would not be better if you get older." Although Mahnaaz was not yet in favor of a second marriage, the family insisted. She thought, "Let's avenge the insult by marrying Omar in this way." Thinking this, she agreed to the marriage. As soon as Shahdad got the news of this marriage, he lost his senses. He went crazy. His condition gradually deteriorated to the point that he could no longer walk. Mahnaaz's name was always on his lips and she was alive in his memory. News of his condition somehow reached Mahnaaz and she became restless. She could not bear it and reached Shahdad against her will. When she reached there, she saw that Shahdad had become very weak and was lying on the bed as if he was breathing his last. As soon as Mahnaaz saw him, she ran towards him. Shahdad tried to get up but he did not have the strength to do so. He lay there looking at her with great sadness and did not even dare to talk. Mahnaaz sat on his bed with his head on knees. Shahdad stared at Mahnaaz as if he had turned into stone. There were tears in his eyes and Mahnaaz's eyes were also filled with tears. He gently placed his hand on Shahdad's dry lifeless lips. At the same time, he breathed his last and turned into atone for all his sins.